wonder if, so I'm just going to mention, because I was jotting things down from Breakout Room 1, and then maybe somebody from Breakout Room 2 can feed back a little bit as well. So I have to reach for my glasses. So we had a really a good mix of black and white in our breakout group, in listening to each other and sharing the learning that we wanted to undertake, and admitting when we can't recognize one black person from another, and our growing awareness of the fact that, you know, our taxes for the whole of our lives have been paying off slave owners, and that those stately homes were built on the back of slave owners' recompense. Some people in the group talked about having to just be alert all the time. They walk down the street to who's coming, where to walk, how to be, how to have your hair, how some forums just wouldn't accept natural black hair, and that affects the kind of jobs that you can take or not, or how you present yourself. And we looked at what we would want in the future, and that was really well said by one member of the group, saying that what we really want is acknowledgement of the problem, acknowledgement of the issue, and then some mandatory education in schools and in the workforce, mandatory equalities training, particularly where there's a mixed workforce, so that people understand, white people understand the impact of their behaviour on that person and on their families. And somebody just pointed out that the signs of the legacy of slavery is everywhere. That when you're a black person with a surname like Thomas, that shows that was a slave owner's name given to you. It's not an African name or an Afro-Caribbean name. So would somebody like to report back from the second breakout group?
Can I just come in there, Jane? A lot of Caribbeans that choose to acknowledge that our Black history and our African history is we often change our name to an African name. And I did that. I was born Joanne Miriam Boscombe, and now I'm Fujo Miyaka Malaika. And I consciously changed my name because I knew that I was given a slave name and I wanted to change my name to an African name. So a lot of Caribbeans do that, especially those that come to the UK.
At what age did you do that?
I did it in 2001, but I did study Black history in my early 20s. So I was conscious. I wanted to be conscious from a really young age. And also as well, my aunties and my mother, they became Rastafarians in the 70s. So I kind of had that cultural awareness around me from very, very young. So I've always made a conscious decision I even gave both my boys a naming ceremony and gave them both an African name when they were younger. They don't use the name, but I consciously gave them that naming ceremony so that they would have an African name.
But even that points up the fact that many people who come to the UK or have had however many generations they've been here, if they don't have so-called a white English name, white people balk at learning a name that's slightly different. And
I'd like to contribute to the subject of names, if that's okay.
Please.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the chat I gave an example of a black lawyer that I met in the 90s when I was doing work experience at a law centre, who was a Caribbean man, and he changed his name to an African name. So obviously he was what you might consider to be a conscious person.
Yeah, that's what we call them. Yeah.
So I was kind of explaining what that means, what that meant then. I don't know if it means the same thing now when people say they're conscious and woke, but that's kind of what it meant then, and probably still does, but I'm sure there's different definitions for what consciousness means when a black person says they're conscious. And then so that's one thing, and even my pseudonym royalty is based on a similar thing, but a bit deeper than that, I'd say, and not everybody would agree, with regards to what I believe our the African diaspora identity is, going back to ancient biblical days, really, where before black people landed in Africa and other places, they were in Israel and so forth. And so that's, you know, where I'm coming from. So yeah, no, that's it. I just wanted to contribute to that. There was something I was going to say, but it's completely slipped my mind with regards
Might
to,
come back to you.
but I know quite a few people, and you know, it's like yourself. I mean, I attended Saturday school growing up, so Saturday school is and was then just like a supplementary school, but the focus really was on Black history and culture and education. I don't know about Saturday schools now, you know, as I don't have any children that I send to Saturday schools, but I'm sure it's the same thing.
Yeah,
there was
it is the same. And so what happens in our community is that in the Caribbean community, we know that the normal education system doesn't always meet the needs of our children. So we have Saturday school and we pay for it. And our children from school, all throughout school, will go to Saturday school every Saturday morning. And they often learn the subjects of maths, English, science, and Black history.
Yeah, and, I do remember Black history being a real strong focus more than any
other.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And but my sons are 30 and 23, and they both went to Saturday school, both in London when we lived there and here in Manchester. And they're still running. They are still running.
Both for expanding on that, but we have other groups to report back. Jane,
no problem.
Asking somebody?
Yes, from group 2.
Okay, I'm going to report back. Where is the group? Mary, the other person must be on the other page. We took some time talking about where we'd come from. One of the group has just retired and is looking forward to doing what's next. And we looked at what we thought was why we were here, which was the main question of what we should do. I'll just go through a few points. We felt, because we didn't have any Black people in our group, that we felt that one of the issues for Black people was they would feel they would need to conform, and rather than coming as themselves. And perhaps that was an area that we needed to think about. We talked about a book by Ruth King, I think it was, about being more mindful about race and the role of affinity groups. Can one of you talk about affinity groups?
Aye.
Right. Okay.
This is the book, by the way. Sorry, it's Tara Vandana here.
Yeah.
It's Mindfulness of Race. And I'm in a sort of affinity group at the moment. So Ruth King makes some suggestions for they're very insightful questions that help white people explore their own roots and conditioning around race in a non-judgmental way, with the whole emphasis being about being white people educating themselves, at least in the first instance.
Okay.
Those questions are available for free as a PDF on Google.
Great, thanks. And I think it picks up on something that Margaret was saying about looking at her own attitudes that she's been brought up with. So we talked about that, and then we talked about another mechanism for looking at what we could do. So we've not come up with any answers. We've just looked at mechanisms for doing something. And the other thing that we talked about was courageous conversations. Can one of the group talk about courageous conversations?
Yeah, I will. This is a really important method, and it can lead into actions because it means people across difference get to talk to each other. Sometimes it can be done in white groups or black groups, and sometimes it can be done in a mixed group. And if it's done in a mixed group, which has a lot of diversity, then I think it's really important that the facilitation is done by a mixed team, so that white women and black women are working together, or men as well, because it enables us to get to where the violence lies, rather than seeing it as just prejudice. And it enables us then to recognise our own power in any given situation, and the institutions that we're aligned with that need to change. Like Malika was saying at the beginning, the policy level that needs to change, and the practice of the big institutions that need to change. So yeah, I think a few people have spoken about courageous conversations, and it is a method that's being used quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, and then the affinity group perhaps can be a place that we return to check out. But I believe really strongly that just as I think anti-sexist men need to check out with women that they're allies with, I think white people really need to check out with their black comrades, black brothers and sisters, about our practices. I don't really believe that we should just be doing it without those conversations. So
Yeah.
Because
I think one of the things that came out of our conversation was that it would highlight blockages, areas that you can look at. And I think the third thing that I just want to mention was I mentioned that one of the group, I think it was you, Janet, was newly retired, and you were looking at where you could put your best efforts. And there was an idea about looking at, this is on an individual basis, where does your power live on an individual basis, or where in terms of your experience it was, so that it could help you identify what you could put where you could put your work to make most impact.
May I say thank you at this stage? Thank you very much. Loads and loads of good stuff coming out. Jane, we got more groups to go to?
Group 3. Would somebody like to summarise? I'm just looking at, we've got a time check. Yeah, we need to summarise a little bit more quickly, I'm afraid. Group 3?
Group 3 is Paul, Penelope, Sister Royalty and Stella. Anyone fancy sharing?
Well, I don't know if anybody else wants to from my group.
We talked about what had brought us to the group and what our previous experience had been. And we talked with, we were 2 white women and a black woman who shared with us. She was concerned about confidentiality and was anxious that this wasn't reported. And she shared a lot of her experience in the work setting and how difficult it had been to progress at work in the way that would have been appropriate to her ability and qualifications. Isn't that right? Do you agree?
Yes. Well, basically, it's just bullying, which
Yes.
I was told. I didn't really put it down to racism, but the union rep said, yeah, this is covert racism. And I guess when entering that particular work environment, I just thought that and I'm not just blowing my own trumpet, but I was great at what I did. I am, but I did lots of great stuff, and that seems to be a problem for, I guess, my immediate line manager, just because of the profile, etc., that I was receiving. And yeah, it just didn't make sense. So I would be bullied. Yeah.
And I think you'd said that previously you hadn't recognised it as racism, and it took somebody else to point out to you that this really was racism.
A white person, 1 or 2 white people who actually were union reps, said that this is covert racism, and they were having enough. They just had enough of it. It was relentless, and it went on for years. Relentless, like trying to destroy me or something. You know, because it's just based on all lies and rubbish, just to try to bring me down or discredit me. You know.
Sis, I'm just going to move us on so that we can hear from all the groups in time. Group 4.
It's Margaret speaking again. We were an all-female group. We drew very much on our family histories and our personal histories. We spoke about pain. We spoke about growing realization of what was actually around us all the time. We spoke about our worries and our fear for the future. But we also spoke a little about our strengths and where that strength helped us to engage in these conversations. We all agreed that we need to do something as individuals, as groups, and as a society. I think that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Margaret.
Could I just add a quick word? I actually have to go, but I feel very, very much that we need to ask forgiveness, that white people need to ask forgiveness, and that's the only way things are going to change from both sides. I think it's got to come from a foundation of repentance. Otherwise, we're building on the sand.
Thanks, Ginny.
I'm sorry I have to go. Thank you very much.
Well noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Group 5. Somebody like to report back? Philip, do you want to be?
I'm group 6, so.
Are you group
Group
6?
5 was Anne, Kathy, Jill, Jen, and Sue.
Anne, do you want to unmute yourself and report back? You need to unmute yourself first, though.
Yeah, sorry. We were a group of all white women.
I was group 7, so it's another Anne.
Okay. Anne Lewis, are you?
Yes. We were a group of all white women, and we found that in our experience of growing up, opportunities of meeting Black people were very limited, and it made us realise how long it took us to understand the way that Black people are treated. We felt very strongly about the changes that need to be made in the curriculum of teaching history, so that Black history is included in that. And we felt how important it is to meet people from other backgrounds and simply have conversations. And we wanted to perhaps do some practicing of really finding the words when you're landed in a difficult racist situation as to what you say and how you speak up and stand up when it's totally unexpected and you can't think what you're meant to say, and then also about the importance of actually talking as we are doing this evening. Perhaps if anybody else wants to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Anne said. I think a workshop to help to help people, or to help people know how to react when they see racism take place, whether that's subtle or overt. I think that would be brilliant, because I've heard that come up quite a bit in this year or last year as well. And also, one of the ladies asked, how can a retired person show solidarity to Black people? And I was thinking about it during dinner, and I thought, as we know that there's racism in the police force, only last Saturday, a young Black man was taken in custody in Wales, and he came out of the police custody and he died at home, and it's really, really frightening. And it seems like I think a more there's opportunities to become independent, to be part of independent advisory groups. And I know a couple of Black people that are part of those to hold the police accountable. And also a police crime commissioner also has that responsibility. But we're finding in Lancashire that they seem to recruit and interview for the police. They interview on the new police crime, the new inspector. So I think it's really important to be part of an independent advisory group to scrutinise and to hold the police accountable. Also, there's also opportunities to be independent custody visitors in police stations, so that providing you don't have a criminal record, you can just go and visit somebody who's been taken by the police and kept overnight under police surveillance, just to visit them and check that they're safe, check that they're not scared. And as far as I know, you can apply to do that, but I'm still talking with Lancashire Police to find out how people can do it. And the third thing, I think, is to become, to try and encourage your local school to have a more diverse governing bodies. because schools, I've spoken to maybe 4 Black governors, friends of mine, and who say it's often very difficult because school governing bodies are often very white and very stuck in their ways. They don't like change. And the purpose of being a school governor is to make those positive changes happen. So there are 2 examples, 3. And also another member of our group said she'd like to know more about white supremacy and white privilege and discuss these topics further.
Brilliant, Jen. Thank you. That's really helpful. Group 6. Could somebody report back on group 6?
So hot, Hayley.
I can do that if that's helpful. Yep. So we reflected on our personal stories, the experiences of feeling sometimes as an outsider, experiences of not seeing racism as children, but also of inheriting attitudes that were paternalistic and not necessarily hurtful, but building in the sort of structures of paternalism and thinking of Black people as, well, poor them, to put it quite bluntly. We talked about structural issues in faith settings, but also microaggression as part of daily life, and the exhaustion and weariness that comes from having to deal with that throughout one's life. And I guess bringing those together was the needing to a growing understanding of what white privilege actually means in practice and in our lives.
I think, Philip, thank you very, very much for that. I think Jane has disappeared because her battery has just died. So we have group 7.
Okay, shall I start and then other people pick up?
Yes, please.
Thank you. There were a couple of outsiders, myself included, because I come from Essex. So very privileged to be allowed into this group. We did some of us talked about our reasons for being there and our experiences from different perspectives. We had somebody who was a Buddhist in the group, and one of the main things that came out from a suggestion was a political stance. So how to address this ongoing, long-standing issue, which has been talked about for forever, how to bring about change. And so somebody was of the opinion needs to be political, needs to start from the top, because we have a grassroots movement, but the real change politically, in his opinion, came from taking up a political stance. And would somebody else like to add? Oh, somebody suggested training, yeah, anti-racist training, and particularly for MPs. And the question was raised about who actually does this training, and also talking about the anti-racist training for teachers. Do they get it? So we weren't sure who actually had anti-racist training, who was making decisions.
Thank you, Colette. That's the final group, group 7.
Sorry, that was group 7.
That was group 7. I'm sorry, my battery went on my computer, so I was out of the loop for a while. What?
Does anybody else wanted to add to that? Our personal responsibility was one.
We're just coming up to 7:30, and some people will have to leave us. But what we'd like to do at the end of each evening is to say a pledge together, and by saying it each week, for it to resonate more and more with us. And so I'd like to go over to, is it Warren? Warren, are you going to split the screen and show us the...
I'm trying to share the screen. I'm not quite sure why it's not happening. Come on, there we go.
Show our
so
Black Lives
if you'd
Matter
like to
pledge.
join as we read this, then please do join in. We share this at the end of the conference in November. It's our Black Lives Matter pledge. Racism has no place in this world, in our country, in our cities, in our community, or in our home. We will use our voice as our platform to challenge racism every opportunity. To our colleagues, families, and friends of the Black community, we stand in solidarity with you all. We are your pathmates, and we shall use our voices to challenge racism at every opportunity. We will look within our communities and identify where we can do better and continue to challenge those who know no better. That was our pledge, Black Lives Matter, in November 2020.
Very good.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think it's been very powerful, and it's been very good to be able to get everyone involved in the discussions. I've tried to make some notes about the feedback, which if I can get it typed up before next week, all been good. There's some quite exciting stuff, some good ideas, talks of hope, talks of looking at forgiveness, and maybe us doing more questions about repentance in there, but also our learning and our commitment to do things. Over the next 4 weeks, we're hoping to hear from other people. I need to speak to Elizabeth after this to find out when she can share some ideas with us. She's actually going to be on, so she is on the Greater Manchester Race Equalities panel. Alison Malach, who's been mentioned, who's doing some training in a book club, is going to be talking with us on the 1st of February. Sue Cockrell, who spoke so movingly and powerfully at our conference, is also going to be talking with us in the second half of this series as well. We're still confirming the fourth speaker. So thank you everyone for your contribution this evening. It's been very powerful. A lot of good stuff has come up. Thank you for being part of this journey. And thank you, Margaret, Jane and Malika, for holding this evening together, and everyone for your contributions. And if you can make one of the book groups between now and next week, all well and good, please feel free to join in, and hopefully have a chance to see you all next week.
See you at 6 p.m.
Warren, can you put the pledge into the chat, please?
The pledge into the chat. I'm not sure I can get PDF in the chat, but I can try.
Could you email it to us?
I'll email it out to everyone.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Kate.
Yes, please.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'll do that tomorrow. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Peace be with you, everybody.
Everyone,
Bye.
Peace be with you.
Namaste.